In Laboratory Reddit, today's story is:
My teacher lent me money while my family abandoned me. Today I returned successful and exposed their lies about me. I come from a really poor family, where every day was a struggle to survive. My parents had jobs that barely covered the basics, and we never had any savings. After paying for food and rent, when we could, there was nothing left. Many nights I went to sleep on an empty stomach, and I learned from a young age that it was no use complaining to my parents. It was our reality and I had to accept it without asking questions. The situation worsened when my younger sister was born. With one more mouth to feed, everything became more difficult. I still clearly remember all the times we were kicked out of the places where we lived. Time and again, the landlord would come to collect the rent and, after many excuses, we would have to leave. My father's old car, which he had inherited from his grandmother, became our refuge more than once. It wasn't much, but at least it protected us during the cold nights when we had nowhere to sleep. When you grow up like that, it's hard to imagine a different life, but I was determined to get ahead. I knew that if I worked hard at school, I could achieve something in life. My parents never cared about my good grades. In fact, they acted as if they didn't mean anything. For them, my school achievements weren't worth anything because they expected me to end up being a waiter or a supermarket cashier, like them. All they wanted from me was for me to stay out of trouble and look after my younger sister. And when I say look after, I mean they practically made me responsible for raising her. For as long as I can remember, I was the one who woke her up and got her ready for school. I had to help her with her homework, even though I was also studying. I always made sure she had everything she needed. When she hurt herself or fell, she would call me, not my parents. They were always busy working, struggling to pay the bills and were hardly ever at home. From a very young age I understood that looking after my sister was my responsibility, even though I was just a child too. As you can imagine, my sister and I were very close. We spent so much time together that she looked up to me and I did my best to take care of her. But we were very different. While I worked hard at school and got excellent grades, she wasn't interested in studying. I would sit with her to help her with her homework, but she couldn't concentrate or pay attention for long. My parents didn't care about her grades, just like they didn't care about mine. Because of this, she never felt that school was important. In my last year of secondary school, I started to think about my future. I had worked very hard for years, always dreaming of a better life, and I wanted to get into a good university. My science teacher, who had always noticed my hard work and good grades, was the one who suggested that I could apply to a university abroad. At first, I didn't think it was possible. I had no money, no support, no idea how to make it happen. But his words gave me hope. He told me that I had the potential to do something extraordinary with my life, and that I would find better opportunities abroad. He even offered to help me look for scholarships outside the country. My teacher knew how difficult my life was at home, how my parents struggled and how much responsibility I had to bear. That's why he encouraged me even more to consider leaving. He explained that staying with my family could keep me trapped in the same cycle of poverty and struggle. He wanted me to strive, find my own path and build a future where I could be financially independent and free. So I took a risk and applied to several universities abroad. I didn't think I would be accepted, much less with a scholarship, but somehow my prayers were answered. I still remember the surprise and disbelief I felt when my acceptance letter arrived. It was one of the happiest moments of my life. For the first time, all my hard work had paid off in a way I never imagined possible. While my teacher was happy for me, my parents reacted very badly. They were upset, even angry. They didn't want me to leave. My mother was scared for me, saying that I wouldn't be able to survive on my own because I had never been away from them. The irony is that I had always been on my own all my life. I had always taken care of myself without their help for as long as I could remember. I was the one who made things work, not them. My father, for his part, tried to convince me. He told me that he had always hoped that I would go to a local university and find a part-time job nearby to help with the bills and the rent. For him, leaving was like abandoning my responsibilities to the family. He said that as the man of the house, I had to put them first. Then there was my sister. Her reaction broke my heart. She begged me not to leave her, saying that she would be completely alone with my parents if I left. She told me that they wouldn't even care about her. She was right, more than I was. Nobody in the family really looked after her. I had always been the one who took care of her and she knew it. Although my family begged me to stay, deep down I knew that this was my only chance to change my life. I know it may sound selfish, but I realized that if I let this opportunity pass me by, I might not get another one like it. I didn't want to end up like my parents, trapped in a cycle of struggle, poverty and constant worry. So despite her protests, I made the difficult decision to accept the university's offer and move away. When I told my parents my final decision, they were furious. They saw my choice as a betrayal. They threatened to cut all ties with me if I left. My father even said he would no longer consider me his son. He warned me that if I ended up in jail or dead abroad, he wouldn't care. His words hurt me deeply, but I didn't let them get me down. As if my parents' anger wasn't enough, my younger sister was just as upset when I confirmed that I was leaving. She yelled at me for what seemed like an eternity, calling me selfish and accusing me of abandoning her when she needed me. I couldn't understand why I would choose to leave when she felt she still needed me here. I tried to explain to her that this wasn't about her, that I needed to do it for myself. I promised her that I would always be there for her no matter what, but she refused to listen and threatened to support my parents' decision to cut ties with me. It was painful to see her so upset. Knowing that my decision was causing her so much pain affected me, but in the end, I knew I had to stand firm in my decision, even if it meant losing the people I loved. The more they refused to understand me, the more determined I felt. Their rejection only increased my conviction to move forward. I knew in my heart that this was something I had to do for myself. For my own growth and happiness, no matter how painful it was, no matter how many sacrifices I had to make, I couldn't let their anger define my path. I had to be true to myself no matter the cost. The only person who supported me was my science teacher. The only person who believed in my potential when no one else did. He didn't just encourage me. He went further, knowing that my family was not going to help me. He lent me money to cover what I needed to start at university. I felt terrible about borrowing money, but I still remember him saying to me, "One day, when you have made it and have a good job, you can come back and pay me. Until then, don't worry about it." His kindness touched me deeply and gave me the strength to keep going. So I left. I moved abroad, worked hard and managed to finish university. This year I graduated and now I have an amazing job, something I never thought possible when I was a child. It seems unreal to think how far I have come. Now that I can finally repay the loan my teacher gave me, I want to see him again. More than anything, I wanted to thank him for believing in me when nobody else did. Without his support, I don't know where I would be. I also wanted to use this visit as an opportunity to reconnect with some of my relatives. During my 4 years abroad, neither my parents nor my sister called me once. I still don't fully understand why they got so angry with me for choosing to do what was best for me. Maybe they saw my decision as a rejection of them or felt abandoned. Whatever the reason, the silence hurt. But I tried to put those feelings aside. So I booked my flights and came back to my hometown. The first person I visited was my science teacher. He had done so much for me and I couldn't wait to tell him about everything I had achieved. He was delighted to see me again and sincerely happy for the life I had built for myself. It felt amazing to share my success with the one person who believed in me from the start. As my hometown is small, news that I had returned and was doing well in my career spread quickly. Some of my relatives got in touch and I was happy to meet up with them. They were kind and welcoming. It felt good to see familiar faces again. I also visited my maternal grandparents. It had been years since I had been to their house and I missed my grandmother's cooking. Just entering their house brought back so many happy memories. My grandparents had organized a family reunion for the occasion, hoping it would be the perfect opportunity for me to reconnect with the rest of my family. They had invited my parents, my sister and some of my cousins. My grandparents believed this would be a chance for us to put the past behind us and unite as a family once again. I knew they had the best of intentions and part of me hoped they were right, but when the day came, my parents and my sister did not show up at the party. It was obvious that they didn't want to see me. I tried not to let it get to me, but their absence hurt. Although I enjoyed the company of my grandparents and cousins, there was still a void, knowing that the people I most wanted to see were not there. It was during this party that one of my cousins shared something that left me speechless. Apparently, after it became known that I was back in town, many neighbors and relatives began to ask my parents why they didn't make the effort to meet me. My cousin told me that instead of telling the truth or giving a simple answer, my parents had started telling everyone a completely false story about me. According to them, I was ungrateful. They were telling people that they had sacrificed everything for me, that they had spent their entire life savings sending me abroad to the school I had dreamed of. And now, with my return home, they said that I was not willing to repay them for all the sacrifices they had made and that was why they did not want to see me. It was shocking to hear that they were spreading such a biased and false story about me. As if this wasn't bad enough, my parents had gone as far as to say that my sister had to give up her own dreams because they had no money left after spending everything on me. I couldn't believe it. At first, I didn't know what to say, but then I started to laugh. It was so ridiculous I could hardly believe it. Did they sacrifice themselves for me? Did they spend all their savings to send me abroad? I wish that were true. I wish they really had given me some money, but no, they never did. That's why I had to ask my teacher for money. In reality, I struggled every step of the way once I was abroad. My parents didn't just refuse to help me financially. They cut me off completely. They didn't call, they didn't look for me, they didn't give me a single word of encouragement as I tried to survive in a foreign country on my own. I had no one to lean on. I was scared, alone and struggling to get by throughout university. Fortunately, I got a great job in the end, and in a way it was all worth it. Now that I'm back and have built a life for myself, my parents don't want people to know the truth. They don't want anyone to see how they abandoned me all those years ago when I needed them the most. Instead, they were trying to make up this story to make themselves look like the victims and me the bad guy. I guess it's easier for them to paint me as ungrateful than to admit that they cut ties with me because I chose to pursue my dreams instead of staying at home and sacrificing for them. So I decided to be honest with my cousins. I told them everything, the whole truth. Until then, I had always stayed away from family gossip. Some people close to me did know that my parents didn't talk to me much after I went abroad, but not everyone knew the full story. So I explained to them how my parents did practically nothing to help me when I needed them most. I shared how I got into the university of my dreams completely on my own merits, without a single penny from them. I made it clear to them that my sister didn't have to give up her dreams because of me, and that there were no life savings sacrificed for my education because there simply never were any savings. Every step I took was thanks to my own efforts and the support of people like my professor, not my parents. My cousin was understandably furious when she found out the truth, and after that, I knew that the news would spread quickly within our family about what my parents had done to me. That's how things work in small towns. I know that when my parents find out that I've been telling people the truth, they're going to be furious. They spread this false story to protect their image, and now it's going to fall apart. Part of me wonders if I should have just ignored what they were saying. Maybe it would have been easier to let it go and avoid the drama, but honestly, it makes me so angry. Hearing them twist the story to make themselves look like heroes, while painting me as ungrateful is too much to bear. After everything I went through, I can't just keep quiet and let them rewrite history. I know there will be consequences for this, so I'd for clearing up their false rumor. Update 1. To be honest, I don't understand what my parents mean when they say that my sister had to give up her dreams because of me. She never showed any interest in studying and didn't want to go to university, even when I was still living at home. That's just how she was, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it makes their excuses even stranger. Even if she had suddenly decided she wanted to go to university after I left, I don't understand why my parents couldn't have helped her, unless they simply decided not to. I wasn't taking money from them. I never had their financial support. If they had wanted to help her, they could have. It's obvious that this has nothing to do with me and everything to do with them not wanting to take responsibility for their own decisions. Now that people are asking them why they won't meet with me, they've found the perfect scapegoat, me. It's easy for them to blame me for why they supposedly can't help my sister. That way they divert attention from themselves and their decisions, while making me look bad. It's clear that my parents are manipulating the situation. They don't want to admit the truth about how they abandoned me years ago or how they have handled their responsibilities. It's frustrating and painful. But at this point, sadly it doesn't surprise me. Update 2. As my parents have no way of contacting me directly, they spoke to my grandparents to arrange a meeting with me this week. It seems that the criticism they have been receiving from my cousins and other relatives for lying about me finally forced them to face the situation. I immediately agreed to meet with them to clarify everything. My sister also came to the meeting. Despite everything, I was very happy to see her and my parents again. I hoped, perhaps naively, that this might be an opportunity for us to reconcile. But as soon as we started talking, it became clear that they didn't feel the same way. My parents were quick to blame me. They were upset that I had denied their story. My father was especially angry and told me that I had no right to tell people the truth since I hadn't been living with them and no longer considered them family. He accused me of abandoning them for the past 4 years, ignoring that they existed and then suddenly deciding to visit my grandparents and reconnect with relatives. His words hurt. Yes, I had been away for 4 years, but only because they made it clear they wanted nothing to do with me when I went to university. They were the ones who cut off contact, refused to support me and didn't even bother to see how I was getting on during all that time. And now they were twisting the story as if I was the one who had rejected them. I tried to stay calm when I spoke to my father. I told him firmly that it wasn't me who distanced myself from them. It was the 3 of them who chose to exclude me. I never had any problem with them, all I ever wanted was to be part of the family. I explained that although I had lived with the pain of being ignored and abandoned by them, that didn't mean I should keep quiet when they spread such blatant lies about me. I was no longer willing to let them manipulate history for their own benefit. Then I turned to my sister and asked her directly, "What kind of dream did you have to give up because of me?" According to our parents, she had supposedly sacrificed a lot for me, but I had never really understood what they were referring to. On hearing this, my mother immediately started saying that yes, my sister had given up on her dreams, and it was all because I wasn't there to help her. According to my mother, my sister's grades had worsened when I left because she and dad were too busy to look after her. Without me to help her with her schoolwork, she had struggled to keep up. Because of her poor grades, she even had to leave high school. Basically, my mother told me that it was always my job to make sure that my sister succeeded and to guide her step by step through school and solve all her problems, but since I didn't, now she was a failure, and I was to blame for that. I looked at my mother as if she had lost her mind. While my father and sister agreed with her, how could she blame me for everything when it was obvious that my sister, or even they, should have taken more responsibility? It was completely absurd. I had always been there for my sister as much as I could during my childhood, but I couldn't just hold her hand through every obstacle in her life, especially when I was trying to build my own future. I couldn't help thinking how incredibly selfish my family sounded. It was as if they had expected me to give up my dreams for her. Did they really think that my whole life should have revolved around my sister and her needs? They acted as if it was selfish of me to look for something for myself, especially if it meant not being there every second for my sister. It wasn't my job to be her parent. My sister was old enough to take responsibility for her own actions, as were my parents, but no, they had collectively decided that it was easier to blame me as if my absence was the only reason for everything that went wrong. To make matters worse, my sister agreed with what my mother said and added fuel to the fire. She began to repeat my mother's words, saying that when I went to school, she felt as if I had abandoned her. She told me how difficult it had been to manage everything on her own, especially without me to help her with her homework, keep her company, give her advice when she needed it, and what surprised me most was that she seemed to sincerely believe that my decision to go abroad had been selfish, that I had chosen my dreams over her needs. It hurt to hear that, but instead of arguing with her, I wanted to give her a chance. So I responded calmly, telling her that if she really wanted to change her life or pursue something new, I would be more than happy to help her now. If she wanted to go back to school or study more, I could support her financially. If she wanted to look for a better job that would help her grow, I would be there to help her in any way I could. I told her that since she clearly wanted my guidance so much, I would be happy to help her with whatever she needed now, but instead of showing any interest in what I offered, my parents and sister told me that if I really wanted to help them, all I had to do was give them money. My sister, without any shame, made it clear that she didn't want to study anymore and that she was happy living in this hometown with her current boyfriend who worked in a supermarket. She was no longer interested in education, she just wanted me to give them money. He even told me that if I could send them money every month, that would be great and I could really help them. I couldn't help but laugh when I heard this suggestion. The nerve of it all was unbelievable. This was exactly what they wanted all along, to make me feel guilty, to twist the situation and then ask me for money. Clearly, they saw me as their personal bank or something. Luckily, my grandparents immediately rejected what my family was asking. My grandfather, without hesitation, told them that asking me for money was not only inappropriate but downright rude, especially considering that they hadn't offered me any financial help during all these years. I couldn't have agreed more. It wasn't that I didn't want to help my sister or support her in building a better future, but the idea of simply giving them money didn't feel right. If I started giving them money, I felt like they would just keep asking for more in the future. My parents, of course, were not happy about this. They started arguing with both me and my grandparents, saying that I should send them money because they took care of me as best they could for so many years. My father called me selfish for not helping my family after everything they had supposedly done for me. It was honestly ridiculous to hear these words come out of their mouths, especially when they had never shown any real care or support for me in the ways that really mattered. They never felt bad about cutting me off, but now they were trying to make me feel guilty so that I would help them financially because they knew I had money. In the end, I stood my ground. I made it clear to my sister that if she ever wanted to make a change in her life, if she ever wanted to build a better future for herself, I would always be there to support her in any way I could. I would help her find opportunities and be her support. But I wasn't just going to give her money. I told my parents that I didn't owe them anything. I continued, my voice firm but calm. I'm going to tell everyone in the family exactly what their true intentions are. I'm going to let them know how they've been trying to manipulate me into giving them money and how they've been using guilt and lies to get what they want. They can go to hell because I won't be their source of income." My parents looked furious when they heard this. They clearly wanted to argue more, but upon seeing my grandfather, they kept their thoughts to themselves. Without saying a word, they both got up to leave in silence. It was as if they couldn't even look at me anymore, not after what I had just said. After they left, I couldn't help but feel relieved. My grandparents were happy that I hadn't given in to my parents. I knew that my parents and my sister were never going to see things from my point of view, and that was something I needed to accept. It's been a while since my last update, and since leaving my hometown I've settled back into my life abroad. I'm relieved to say that my parents can't reach me here or bother me in the way that some of you might have been concerned about. So there's no need to worry about that. Update 3. I also want to mention that I felt a little bad for my sister. Despite everything that happened, I didn't want to leave her with nothing, especially considering that she was still trying to find her way. So before I left my hometown, I discreetly gave her $5,000 and told her that I hoped she would use the money to start over, move to a better city, create a new life for herself and, hopefully, find some direction. I wanted her to have the opportunity to turn things around, to take control of her future, but even with the money I gave her, I'm not sure what she'll actually do with it. I want to believe she'll use it wisely, that it will help her find something more fulfilling, but honestly, I don't have much hope. I've seen how she's handled things so far, and I'm worried that she won't take this opportunity seriously. Regardless, I did my part by supporting her, and in the end, it's her decision to do something good with it.